Okay, welcome back. Your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State calls Rachel Wynn.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony about to be this case will be the truth and the truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please have a seat, state your full name and address.
My name is Rachel Wynn,
Can you spell your last name?
Nguyen.
Agent Wynn, where do you work?
I work at the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, most commonly known as SLED.
And how long have you worked for SLED?
I've worked for SLED, it's going to be 7 years in September.
And what do you do there?
I'm currently a forensic serologist within the DNA casework department.
And what kind of training have you gotten to be a forensic serologist?
I've received in-house training at SLED for the component of forensic serology. I went under a year-long training process under a court-qualified forensic serologist. During this time, I was able to observe the different evidence processing techniques as well as the different types of analysis we perform there. Also during this time, I was able to practice these various techniques under close supervision. After time had passed, I then went through training samples, which I performed independent analysis to prove my knowledge and abilities to perform the various tests we perform in the serology department. Once that was successfully completed, I then entered a competency phase. So that's testing my knowledge and abilities to perform all the techniques that we perform independently. This competency phase included a written exam, an oral exam, a competency test, which is a mock case, as well as a mock court. Once all these components were successfully completed, I was then deemed able to do independent analysis within the area of forensic serology. After that time, I did undergo another year-long training process in the area of DNA extraction and DNA quantitation. Briefly, what that is that would be trying to pull out DNA from different substances and then seeing if there's any present. That was much similar to my serology training. I was supervised under a court-qualified DNA analyst. I was able to observe the various extraction techniques as well as the quantitation process. Then I performed various practice samples. These samples are non-casework samples to prove my ability to perform these different techniques. Then, much similar to my serology training, I had to perform these techniques independently on training samples. There were 50 of them. Once that was completed, I then went under another competency phase. It was very similar. There was a written exam, an oral exam, a mock case, and then a mock court. Once all these components were successfully completed, I was then able to do independent casework from the portion of DNA extraction to DNA quantitation.
And you talked about the testing. Did you pass all of your tests?
I did pass all of my testing.
And have you been qualified as an expert before?
I have been qualified as an expert before.
In what fields?
Forensic serology.
This time, Your Honor, I'd ask that Agent Wynn be qualified as an expert in the field of forensic serology.
Any objection?
No objection.
She's so qualified.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Agent Wynn, how did you become involved in this case?
So my involvement in this case is relatively recent. The DNA analyst, Ryan Dwayne, requested me to perform blood screening on a couple sets of swabs and then the DNA extraction and quantitation on them.
So I'm going to stop you for a second. The jury's heard a little bit about sort of the presumptive positive, so I'm just going to go straight to DNA extraction. Can you explain to them what is DNA extraction?
Do you want me to explain what I did or in general?
Just in general, what is it?
So in general, we're going to take, I'm sure you heard about the cuttings that serologists take from clothing or other items and swabs that they collect potential DNA for. I'm going to take small portions of those swabs or cuttings And then I'm going to try to pull the DNA out of those to separate it out. Following that, it will be quantitated. So to see if there's a quantity there, whether there's DNA present or if it's absent, and if present, how much is there.
How do you pull it? Like, how does that happen?
So the process is that a small cutting of the swab, which is a sterile Q-tip-like device, or a cutting, I will cut an even smaller portion off of that. I'll put it in a test tube. I will add reagents, which are chemicals that aid in kind of pulling the biologicals from the substance. After that, I will put it on an instrument. An instrument is a scientific machine. It will aid in the extraction process. So once again, it's trying to pull it away from the cotton swab or the cutting of the shirt and just isolate it so it's by itself. Then I will take that portion of the liquid that's in the test tube and I will put it on a different instrument or scientific device, and that it will analyze it and then give us data, which I do not read the data. The DNA analyst, Ryan Duane, will review it.
So now I'm gonna go to what you did in this case.
Okay,
So item 67, is that one of the items you tested?
may I review my notes?
You may.
Yes, item 67 is an item I tested.
And what was item 67?
Item 67 is swabs from the rear side of center console of the Chevrolet Impala.
And what was your job? What did you do in with this particular item?
So upon receiving this evidence, I took a sterile swab, once again, is like a sterile Q-tip. I dampened it with sterile water. Then I applied that to the swabs that were submitted to try to pull any stain off. Then I performed our phenolphthalein test, which is a presumptive test to see the possible presence of blood.
What was the result of that test?
The result was positive.
So what did you do based on that?
So because it was positive, as I briefly mentioned before, I cut a small portion of the swab and put it in a test tube to extract and quantitate.
And then testing it any further is not your job, is that correct?
No, after quantitation, all the samples will be handed to Ryan Duane.
Now I want to move to item 71. What is item 71?
Item 71 is swabs from front passenger seat headrest of the Chevrolet Impala.
And what was the result of that testing?
It was presumptively positive for phenolphthalein, which was our blood screening test.
So what did you do based on that?
I did the same thing that I did with the item 67 that I just mentioned. So since it was positive, I cut a portion out and then did the extraction and quantitation.
And item 72?
Item 72 are swabs from rear passenger seat of the Chevrolet Impala.
What was the result of that test?
Those were positive for phenolphthalein, and the same process occurred as the previous swabs.
And item 75?
Item 75 were swabs from side of driver's seat headrest of the Chevrolet Impala.
And again, what was the result of that test?
That was positive for phenolphthalein.
So what did you do based on that?
The same thing as the previous sets of swabs.
Item 76?
Item 76 is swabs from rear driver's side seat of Chevrolet Impala.
And what was the result of that test?
It was positive for phenolphthalein.
So what did you do based on that?
The same process as the previous swabs.
All right. Item 77.
Item 77 is swabs from driver's seat, seat buckle receiver of Chevrolet Impala.
What was the results of that test?
It was also positive for the phenolphthalein test.
Based on that, what did you do?
The same as the previous swabs that I've mentioned.
Now, 125.1, what was that?
Item 125.1 are swabs from sole of right shoe of pair of pink Adidas size 9K shoes from closet underneath stairs from Maria Howard's residence.
And did you do any testing to that?
I did not do any testing. From my understanding, they had already been tested with phenolphthalein.
So even though on this report, there's some things that you did, there's some things that other people did, is that fair to say?
Yes.
Beg the court's indulgence. Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
The police court, Your Honor.
Yes.
What day, what's the date that you were asked to do this testing?
I do not have a record of the specific date it was requested, but I do have the date and time I took them into my custody.
What is that?
I took them into my custody on June 11th of 2021 at 12:44. Those were the everything in our container L. A container just holds multiple items. So that would be items 67, 71, 72, 75, 76, and 77. Item 125.1, I took into my custody at the same time. So June 11th, 2021 at 12:44.
2021, not 2019.
2021.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything further?
No, sir.
Let me step down. Your next witness.
The state calls Agent Ryan Dwayne.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony about to give in this case to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Please have a seat, state your full name. and address. Thank you.
Ryan Dwayne, Dewane.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Agent Dwayne, where are you employed?
I work for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, also known as SLED.
Please tell the jury what your duties are at SLED.
I am a forensic scientist assigned to the DNA casework department,
How long have you been there?
approximately 5.5 years.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about your background, training, and any additional experience you might have?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in biology pre-professional from Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. I also have 2 minors in chemistry and English. I'm currently pursuing my Master's of Science degree in biology from Clemson University in Greenville, South Carolina. During my education, I have completed courses in molecular biology, genetics, statistics, and biochemistry. These 4 courses are considered the foundations of forensic biology. When I was hired at SLED, I underwent an extensive training program. This training program included practice samples, training samples, mock cases, written exams for DNA and serology, a report writing exam, an oral exam, a technical review exam, a competency, and a mock court exam.
Do you participate in any training or continuing education?
Yes, we are required to complete approximately 8 hours of continuing education yearly.
How many times have you ever testified in court before?
I have
Approximately how many times?
8 times.
And have you ever been qualified as an expert?
I have
In what field?
forensic DNA analysis and serology.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would offer Agent Dwayne as an expert in DNA analysis, forensic DNA analysis and serology.
No objection.
She's so qualified.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Dwayne, what is DNA?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. This is just a chemical found in all of our bodies. We get half of it from our mother and half from our father, and aside from identical twins, no 2 people will have the same DNA profile.
So when we talk about DNA analysis, what does that mean?
DNA analysis is our process of developing a DNA profile from either evidence or a known standard.
You said developing a DNA profile. What does that mean?
A DNA profile is your biological DNA represented in the form of a series of numbers, and this is what we use to compare.
So in terms of comparison, what are you doing with the DNA profile in order to compare it? How does that process work?
We develop a DNA profile from known individuals associated with the case. We then compare their profile to the evidence profiles developed.
Okay. And when you do that, what does it mean if you come back with the result that a particular profile is included?
This means that the individual is possibly included in the mixture or profile.
What is a mixture?
A mixture is an item that has multiple individuals on the same item.
An item that has multiple individuals on the same item. Is that what you said?
That's correct.
Okay, so this pen, for example, if I were to hand it to you, would it be possible that both my DNA profile and your DNA profile would be on the pen?
Yes, that is possible.
And so would it be possible then for there to be a mixture of your profile and my profile on the pen?
That is correct.
So if you receive an item of evidence, if you receive this pen under that example, what would you do in order to determine which profile belongs to which person?
We use a statistical software program called StarMix to do our comparisons.
And as a result of using that software, you can have a result where somebody, I believe you said, is included in the mixture, correct?
That is correct.
Could you also have a DNA profile excluded?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. So you used StarMix, you said, to conduct this analysis, correct?
That is correct.
How do you report results of that analysis?
If we have any possible inclusions, then we report that conclusion with a statistic.
Okay. Is the same true about exclusions?
If an individual is excluded, then we just say that they are excluded from the profile.
With no statistical value to the level of exclusion, I guess?
That is correct.
Okay. So when you're talking about these statistics, you said you assign a statistical value if there's a profile included, correct?
That is correct.
So how do you explain what that statistic is and what that means?
We have a verbal scale at the end of our reports. This shows our level of support based on the number that's generated.
And what does that verbal scale consist of?
We have multiple levels of support. Our lowest level is weak support. We then have, moderate support, strong support, and then very strong support.
So the highest level of certainty, not certainty, but the highest level statement that you would make about the inclusion of my DNA on this pen, if the science backed it up, are you saying that would be that there is very strong support for my inclusion?
For that conclusion, yes.
Okay. Do you guys, in regards to StarMix, that type of analysis, do you use the word match?
We do not.
And does that mean that you're any less confident about a particular result than if you did use the word match?
No.
So you said that there's a number that you associate a statistical value, right? How does that number, what is the relationship between that number and the level of support in the verbal scale you just described?
The larger the number is, the more support will be associated with it. Our strongest level of support starts at 1 million and above.
All right. And when you're talking about these statistics, can you tell the jury what in the context of that, what a likelihood ratio means?
A likelihood ratio is the type of statistic that we calculate for StarMix. This is simply a mathematical comparison of two possible scenarios that it could explain the DNA profile that we get. The number that is generated is always supporting which scenario is more likely to create that profile.
Two scenarios, you compare them. One scenario suggests what?
The first scenario suggests that an individual is included,
And the second?
that they're excluded or it's someone else.
Okay. Shifting gears slightly, just talking about DNA in general, because there's obviously a lot of items of evidence that you tested. how is it that DNA evidence actually ends up on a person or an item or a thing?
We can get DNA evidence from biological fluids such as saliva, sweat, or blood. We can also get it from hair, and most commonly we get it from touch, which just means that you leave cells behind when you touch something.
Okay, and that could be from any other person that you come in contact with?
That is correct.
Could it end up even be any person that you have not come in close contact with?
Under certain circumstances, that is correct.
Okay. Now, conversely, can you talk about some reasons how I could come in close contact with someone and their DNA does not end up somewhere on me?
This would depend on many different factors. If you did not physically interact with the person, it is unlikely that your DNA would be present. If you're wearing clothing and they only touch your clothing, it's unlikely, or it's less likely that your DNA would be transferred. If you're to touch their skin and they're sweating, then that's a higher chance of collecting their DNA. Some individuals are also what we call shedders, which is a phenomenon where some people end up shedding their cells much more frequently than the average person.
All right, thank you. Let's turn your attention to the specific items in the case that you tested. You generated a lengthy report in connection with this case, is that correct?
That is correct.
Do you have that in front of you?
I do.
Okay. All right, I want to turn your attention to item 2 on your report. And what is item 2?
Item 2 is swabs from the left shoe back white in color portion of Nathaniel Rowland.
Okay. And do you have any results for that item as it relates to Samantha Justerson?
I do.
What is your result?
A DNA profile suitable for comparison was developed. The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture, versus scenario 2, where it's 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture, meaning she's not a contributor. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 3.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Tying back in our verbal scale, what level of support is that for Samantha Josephson's inclusion in the profile on Mr. Rowland's shoe?
This would fall into our very strong support range.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about a couple other items of Mr. Rowland, relating to Mr. Rowland. Item number 4, that's your item number, not an exhibit number. Item 4 are swabs from underneath Mr. Rowland's right hand fingernails. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And what was your, well, let me ask you this. What results do you have related to Ms. Josephson in regard to Mr. Rowland's right hand fingernails?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. Because these are Nathaniel Rowland's fingernails, we can expect his DNA to reasonably be there. So his DNA profile is considered in both scenarios. So scenario 1 is Nathaniel Rowland, Samantha Josephson, and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture, versus the scenario where Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 94 million times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland, Samantha Josephson, and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Just making sure I got it. So we're talking about Mr. Rowland's right hand fingernails, correct?
That is correct.
And obviously he's going to be included in that mixture, correct?
It's reasonable to expect his DNA to be included.
And there's, according to your verbal scale, very strong support that Ms. Josephson is included as well.
That is correct.
All right, turning your attention to item number 50 in your report. I'm sorry, forgive me, I jumped ahead of myself. Item number 5. That is left-hand fingernails of Mr. Rowland, correct?
That is correct.
All right, what was the result of your comparison on that item?
The DNA profile developed is a mixture of at least 5 individuals. Due to the complexity of the mixture, no further interpretation will be offered.
Can you explain why that is?
We can only interpret up to 4 individuals in a mixture. Because this was so complex, we are unable to separate individuals, and therefore we do not use it for comparisons.
Too many contributors to the profile, so you can't even come to a conclusion about it.
That is correct.
Item 50, please. That's page 22 of your report. And item 50 is a cutting from the heel area of Mr. Rowland's black socks, correct?
This is item 50.1.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, thank you. Can you distinguish the difference between why there's a 0.1?
Yes, this is called a sub-item. The parent item or the original item is item 50. And when a forensic serologist takes a cutting, it then becomes sub-itemized. So it's 50.1.
When you say cutting, do you mean a literal piece of the fabric of, in this case, a sock would have been cut out and taken from the sock and given to you for further interpretation?
That is correct.
So this 50.1 is a cutting from Mr. Rowland's sock.
That is correct.
And what was your result regarding Ms. Josephson's inclusion on that?
A DNA profile suitable for comparison was developed. The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus a scenario where it's 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 4 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
All right, so, okay, thank you. Item 54, excuse me. 54.1.1 on page 23. Cutting from bandana from Mr. Rowland, is that right?
That is correct.
Show you. Already been marked as states 11 from states 11 that is in evidence. I believe these are the 2 bandanas that were taken. Does that look to be correct?
I did not see the parent item. I only received a cutting.
Fair enough. What was your first comparison on that item?
This was a comparison to Samantha Josephson. The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus the scenario where it's 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 2.6 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Okay, so earlier you talked about mixtures. So this item is a mixture, you said, of 3 different individuals. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And based on what you've just described, is it your testimony that as one of the contributors to that mixture, there is very strong support that it is Ms. Josephson, is that right?
In order for this DNA profile to have been developed, yes.
All right. So as far as a second profile and your second comparison on that item, the bandana for Mr. Rowland, what was your conclusion there?
Under the same scenarios, but comparing Nathaniel Rowland, the DNA profile is approximately 14 sextillion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
14 sextillion, is that in the very strong support category?
It is.
So of the 3 profiles found in the bandana, very strong support for Samantha, correct?
That's correct.
And very strong support for Mr. Rowland, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then part of the statement is that there's also could be an unidentified, unrelated individual. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Now, this jury has heard you several times thus far reference that phrase, unrelated, unidentified individual. Can you explain why that phrase is so prevalent throughout your report?
Whenever we have a mixture of, in this example, 3 individuals, if we can have positive associations with multiple people, but we have an unknown profile that does not match any of the standards submitted in this case, then we just label that as an unidentified, unrelated individual.
Every time you reference this unidentified, unrelated individual, are you talking about one person, like the same person for each one?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. So it could be one person who's not part of your known profiles to compare on one item and somebody completely different on another item.
Yes, that is possible.
All right. I want to turn your attention to a grouping of items you tested relating to Ms. Josephson. So I'm going to send you back to item number 11 from your report, page 8. And in regards to items 11 through 15, are those all, according to your report, suspected hairs from the body of Ms. Josephson?
That is correct.
In regards to 11.1 and 11.1, hair from the right hand of Ms. Josephson, 11.2, a hair, 12, suspected hair from right hand of Ms. Josephson, and 13, well, we'll just go through those first 3. In regards to those, what were your results related to Ms. Josephson?
For item 11.1, the DNA profile was interpreted as a single source. The first scenario is that Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus scenario 2, where it's an unidentified, unrelated individual that contributed the profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile. For item 11.2, the DNA profile was interpreted as single source. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus scenario 2, where it's an unidentified, unrelated individual that contributed the profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 7.1 quintillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile. For item 12, the DNA profile was interpreted as single source. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile. Scenario 2 is an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
For each of those items that you just discussed, those hairs, you indicated that the profile was from a single source. What does that mean?
That means one individual is on the item.
So you know that there's only one individual present in the item, correct?
That is correct.
And you make 2 hypotheses about that one thing. And in this instance, you're saying The one hypothesis is Ms. Josephson is included, correct?
That is correct.
And the other is that it's somebody else.
That is correct.
But your ultimately, are you stating that there's very strong support that she is her DNA profile is the contributor to the single source item?
There is very strong support to see this DNA profile if Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile rather than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
All right, thank you. And is it fair to say that the same would be true for the same conclusions in terms of very strong support for Ms. Josephson's inclusion would be correct for items 14.1, suspected hair, and 14.2, suspected hair, and 15, suspected hair from crotch region of pants on Samantha Josephson?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, I want to turn your attention to item 16. And that deals with fingernail scrapings from Ms. Josephson. Is that right?
That is correct.
All right, and do you have that broken down into some sub items?
I do.
Okay, 16.1, right fingernail scrapings from Samantha Josephson. What are your results related to Ms. Josephson in that regard?
The DNA profile developed is attributable to Samantha Josephson.
All right, and what are your results as it pertains to Mr. Rowland on that item?
Nathaniel Rowland is excluded as a possible contributor.
For the right-hand fingernail scrapings of Ms. Josephson, correct?
That is correct.
And that was done by the star mix analysis that you talked about earlier, that process?
That is correct.
Is there a second type of process or analysis that you can do in regards to DNA profiles as well that's separate from the star mix?
Yes.
What is that?
We also perform what is called YSTR testing.
What is YSTR testing?
YSTR testing is a type of technology that allows us to just isolate male DNA.
Just for male DNA.
That is correct.
Okay. So did you perform YSTR testing on this item 16.1?
I did.
And the process for conducting those tests is completely different from the star mix that you described earlier?
The statistic is different.
The statistic is different. Thank you. So the likelihood ratios, the numbers you've been reciting, do you do that same thing for the YSTR analysis?
No, it is a different type of statistic.
Okay. Did you conduct that analysis on this item?
I did.
And what was the result?
The partial YSTR profile developed is insufficient for interpretation.
What does that mean?
That means that there was not enough DNA developed to interpret.
So in other words, you've tried to take a second route to see what profile could be found under Ms. Josephson's right-hand scrapings, but there wasn't enough there for you to interpret the results.
That is correct.
Okay. Now let's talk about 16.2, which is her left-hand fingernail scrapings. Again, in that situation, under the star mix, under star mix, what was your finding?
The DNA profile developed is attributable to Samantha Josephson.
And I'm sorry, was Mr. Rowland included or excluded as part of that?
Nathaniel Rowland is excluded as a possible contributor.
Did you attempt to do any YSTR analysis on that item?
I did.
And what was the result?
No YSTR profile was developed.
Okay. And how is that different from what you just described a moment ago about insufficient for interpretation?
No profile developed means there was no DNA developed. Insufficient means there was a little bit of DNA, but not enough to interpret it or make any comparisons to it.
All right. Now those were scrapings, I believe, but item 17 are fingernail clippings from Ms. Josephson's right hand. What's the difference between a scraping and clipping?
A fingernail clipping is when you clip the nail off, the tip of the nail. A A scraping is when you take a device and you just scrape underneath the nail and then you swab that device for DNA.
And again, on 17, that one, the fingernail clippings from the right hand, the profile belongs to Ms. Jefferson, is that right?
The DNA profile developed is attributable to Samantha Josephson.
And regarding Mr. Rowland,
Nathaniel Rowland is excluded as a possible contributor.
excluded meaning there's no presence of his DNA under those items on that pursuant to StarMix analysis, correct?
That is correct. There was no other profile developed.
No other profile developed. Okay. Was there a YSTR profile developed on this item?
Yes.
All right. And what was the result of that profile's analysis?
Due to the inability to determine a number of contributors, no further interpretation will be offered regarding the YSTR profile.
Why does the number of contributors to a profile impact whether or not you can interpret it?
For this type of testing, we need to know how many individuals are included in order to know if it's suitable for statistics.
So you couldn't determine how many people were present as part of this YSTR profile, correct?
That is correct.
All right, let's talk about number 18, item 18, fingernail clippings from the left hand of Ms. Josephson. What are your results related to Ms. Josephson? Well, let me ask you this. What is your first comparison regarding that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. Samantha Josephson is contributing to the mixture. These are her fingernails, so we can reasonably expect her DNA to be present. So she will be present in both scenarios. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson, the person of interest, which just means whoever we're comparing to this mixture, and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture, versus the scenario of it being Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is, under the listed propositions, the following individuals are excluded as contributors to this mixture: Xavier McFadden, Nathaniel Rowland, Marcus Dwayne Williams, Maria Howard, Oshimer Williams, and Gerard Fleming.
All of those individuals are excluded from the profile from Ms. Josephson's nail clippings.
That is correct.
All right. Did you do a YSTR test on that one?
I did.
And what was the result?
The YSTR profile developed is a mixture of at least 2 male individuals. The YSTR profile of the major contributor to this mixture is from an unidentified male individual A. Due to the limited information developed, no further interpretation will be offered regarding the minor contributor.
All right, so now we're into a whole nother territory with the YSTR that we haven't talked about previously. You just described in the YSTR that there can be a major contributor and a minor contributor to the YSTR profile.
That is correct.
All right, what does that mean?
A major contributor means that they're the individual contributing the most DNA to a mixture. A minor contributor is the profile that is left.
And you said as far as the major goes, it's an unidentified individual.
That is correct.
And again, this could be somebody completely different from the unidentified individuals you mentioned earlier,
Yes, that is correct.
or it could be the same,
That is correct.
or it could be any number of anybody at any point.
Yes, that is correct.
And because of the limited information, you're saying you could not come up with anything for the minor, is that right?
Yes, no further interpretation could be offered regarding the minor.
All right, so regarding the minor contributor to this YSTR analysis of, just for reference, Ms. Josephson's left-hand fingernail clippings, the major, you say, is unidentified, right?
That is correct.
As far as the minor goes, of all the standards that you have in the case, to include Mr. Rowland and the other names that you just read out, can any of those standards be included or excluded as a minor contributor on that?
I can make no comparisons to any of the individuals concerning the minor contributor.
Just can't say one way or the other because there's not enough information.
That is correct.
You spoke earlier about the ability for a person to pick up DNA from various places. I believe you talked about touch DNA. Can you talk about that a little bit more about what touch DNA is?
Touch DNA is skin cells left behind when you touch an item.
Okay. And how could a person, say, in a courtroom or a bar or a restaurant, pick up some sort of touch DNA onto their person?
There are many scenarios where this could happen. If you were to touch something like a doorknob, then you may leave your DNA there. Another individual may then touch behind you, and you could also pick up their DNA. If you were to touch someone's arm, then you can pick up their DNA or leave your DNA behind. There are certain circumstances wherein it's more likely to leave DNA. For instance, if that individual is sweating and you touch their arm, it's more likely that their DNA will, you'll pick up their DNA rather than if you don't.
And in regards to this item, we were just most recently talking about YSTR testing, correct?
That is correct.
So we're talking about male DNA profiles.
Mm-hmm.
So would it be unusual to you if an individual was riding in a car with multiple males to have a Y profile appear under someone's nails or on their person?
I cannot offer an opinion on that. I can say that if there is contact or if an individual were to touch something that had a lot of another individual's DNA on it, then yes, you could pick up their DNA.
Okay. All right. In regards to item 19, which is a swab from Ms. Josephson's left ankle, what were your results related to Ms. Josephson?
A DNA profile suitable for comparison was developed. DNA attributable to Samantha Josephson is present in this profile. DNA not attributable to Samantha Josephson is also present in this profile. Due to the limited information obtained regarding the foreign contributor, no further comparisons will be offered.
All right. Go ahead.
The partial YSCR profile developed is a mixture of at least 3 male individuals. Due to the inability to calculate a statistic, no further interpretation will be offered.
All right, so we're talking about her left ankle, and obviously she's part of the profile, correct?
That is correct.
It's a mixture, is that right?
Yes,
And one part of the mixture is her,
that is correct.
but you can't determine how many other contributors there are to the mixture.
That is
right?
correct. It was too limited.
Okay, and that was for the star mix analysis, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
For the YSTR, there's a mixture of how many individuals?
At least 3 male individuals.
But you're unable to calculate a statistic of that nature, is that right?
That is correct.
Can you talk about some of the ways in which we've talked about touch DNA in terms of like your hands, you touch the doorknob, you touch something like that. Well, this item deals with ankle. So how is it that a person could obtain a foreign, if you will, DNA profile on their ankle?
Again, there are many different circumstances that could lead to this. If someone were to touch your ankle, then your DNA profile could be present. If the individual were to rub up against another individual's leg or anything that maybe they had a lot of DNA on, these are also circumstances when it would be possible to pick up their DNA.
All right, thank you. I want to move ahead to item 84.1. That's on page 30 of your report. As well as that, and that is the swabs from shoes of Miss Jefferson, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And what results did you obtain related to Miss Jefferson?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus the scenario where an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 7.6 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified unrelated individual contributed the profile.
All right. Item 103 on page 31 is a suspected hair from Ms. Jefferson's shirt. Is that right?
That is correct.
And there are 4 sub-items to that.
That is correct.
Is it fair to say that for 3 of those 4 sub-items of the hair from her shirt that no DNA profile was developed? Is that right?
That is correct.
All right. What about the one, is there one that did have a profile?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you find out about that?
For item 103.3, a DNA profile was developed. Due to the limited information obtained, no further interpretation will be offered.
Not enough information to reach any conclusions.
That is correct.
All right, thank you. All right, let's shift gears a little bit to another grouping of items of evidence in the case. Let's talk about items that were collected from the black Chevy Impala. I'm going to take you back to item 3. It's page 4 of your report. That is a swab from a rear driver door interior panel. Did you test that, or was any testing done for that item for it, whether or not it was blood?
Yes.
What was the result of that?
Presumptive testing for blood was positive.
Okay. And then as far as the DNA analysis, what are your results related to Ms. Jefferson on the swab from the driver door interior panel?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified unrelated individual versus the scenario of it being 2 unidentified unrelated individuals. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 3 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So in regards to that swab from the interior of the rear driver door panel, very strong support that that blood is Ms. Jefferson's. Is that correct?
I cannot say that result.
It was presumptive for blood, right?
That is correct.
Very strong support that her DNA is included in that mixture.
Very strong support for the possible inclusion of Samantha Josephson.
Thank you. Item 22. Actually, item 22.1, page 14. That is a swab from a stain below address window on envelope with handwritten list on back, correct?
That is correct.
All right. What was your first comparison that you did on the envelope, the stain from an envelope?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus the scenario where 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 3.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
What were your findings for that item as it pertained to Mr. Rowland or any of the other standards that you were provided?
Under the same scenario, the following individuals are excluded as contributors to the mixture: Xavier McFadden, Nathaniel Rowland, Marcus Dwayne Williams, Maria Howard, Oshimer Williams, and Gerard Fleming.
All right. 22.2 is the same envelope with the handwritten list, but this is a swab from the outer edge of that item. What was your first comparison on that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus the scenario of 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is The DNA profile is approximately 42 billion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So again, using your verbal scale, would it be correct to say that there's very strong support that Ms. Josephson is part of the mixture on that item, the envelope outer edge?
There's very strong support to see this DNA profile if the scenario where Samantha Josephson is included as a possible contributor.
All right, thank you. Were there any other individuals that were included in that analysis?
There were not.
All right, I want to take you to item 38. .1, sorry. That is, what item is that?
These are swabs from the cuff area and in between fingers of item 38, which are blue plastic gloves from the front passenger door panel of the Chevrolet Impala.
What were your results of that analysis?
The DNA profile developed is a mixture of at least 5 individuals. Due to the complexity of this mixture, no further interpretation will be offered.
I believe you spoke earlier about how, I think you said, if it's more than 4 contributors, then you cannot reach a conclusion. Is that right?
That is correct.
And there were 5 on this item,
Yes, that is correct.
the blue plastic glove from inside the Impala.
That is correct.
Okay. 39.1, did you have the same findings?
Yes,
And that is also a blue glove from the Chevy Impala, is that right?
that is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, item 45.1, can you tell us what that is?
These are swabs from the right sleeve near the cuff of a black jacket, brand Robert Comstock size XL, from the rear passenger seat of the Chevrolet Impala.
And how many profiles were developed from that swab?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals.
All right, and what are the results related to Ms. Josephson on that item, the jacket?
In the scenario where Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus the scenario of it being 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture, the result is the DNA profile is approximately 3.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Were any of the other known standards that you have included in that mixture?
No.
Staying with the black Comstock jacket found from the Impala, item 45.2, I'd ask you the same question about your first proposition in that.
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus a scenario of being 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 2.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
All right. And were any of the other known standards included in that profile?
No.
Okay. Can you talk for a moment about the relationship between touch DNA, as you described it earlier, versus DNA profiles developed from other bodily fluids, such as blood on a particular item within a mixture?
The type of DNA that we get from blood is from the white blood cells within it. The type of DNA we get from touch DNA is from skin cells. We typically have more abundance in blood than we would in skin cells.
So is it fair to say that if there was an item that contained blood, it could overpower a touch DNA sample if there was any other DNA on whatever the item is?
Yes, that is possible.
Item 45.3, also part of the Robert Comstock jacket from the backseat of the Impala. What was your finding as a result of that analysis?
The DNA profile developed is a mixture of at least 5 individuals. Due to the complexity of this mixture, no further interpretation will be offered.
Item 62, that's on page 24. It's the swab from the steering wheel of the Impala. Were you able to reach any results regarding the steering wheel as it pertains to Mr. Rowland?
Yes, the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. In the scenario where Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus the scenario where 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. The result is the DNA profile is approximately 970 billion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
And again, the level of support on your verbal scale that goes with that statistic regarding Mr. Rowland's inclusion of the mixture on the steering wheel is what?
This statistic falls in our very strong support range.
Which is your highest level of support?
That is correct.
Did you also have any results regarding the steering wheel item as it relates to Maria Howard?
I did.
All right. And what was that result?
Under the same scenarios, the DNA profile is approximately 41 septillion times more likely if Maria Howard and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Item 63 is the gear shift from the Impala, correct?
That is correct.
What was the first comparison you did regarding the gear shift of the Impala?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 4 individuals. In the scenario, Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus it being 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 390 billion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
All right. And then regarding the same item, the gear shift, was Mr. Rowland included in that as well?
Under the same scenario, the DNA profile is approximately 150 billion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So in regards to both Mr. Rowland and Ms. Josephson, there is very strong support for their inclusion on the gear shift as part of the mixture, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And then lastly, in regards to the gear shift, what were your findings as it pertains to Maria Howard?
Under the same scenarios, the DNA profile is approximately 27 times more likely if Maria Howard and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
What level of support does that fall into on the verbal scale?
This falls into our weak support range.
Is that the lowest level of support?
That is correct.
All right, sticking with the car, item 64, a swab from the exterior door handle of the rear passenger side of the Impala, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Was Ms. Josephson included in that profile? Or that mixture, rather?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that is the DNA profile is approximately 140 quadrillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
And the level of support for Samantha's inclusion on this item, the door handle of the rear passenger side is what?
This statistic falls in our very strong support range.
Okay, same item, same swab, same profile, mixture, excuse me. What was your result related to Mr. Rowland?
The DNA profile is approximately 9,100 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
What level of support does that correspond to?
This statistic falls in our moderate support range.
All right, last one regarding that exterior door handle. What was the result regarding Maria Howard?
The DNA profile is approximately 2 times more likely if Maria Howard and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
2 times. Does that fall in the weak support category?
That is correct.
All right, item 139.
I apologize. I need to add something to
Sure.
that
Yes,
result.
yes.
Whenever there's the possible inclusion of multiple individuals in a mixture, we have to compare them together just to make sure that still works. For this item, the DNA profile obtained could not be explained by a combination of DNA from Samantha Josephson, Nathaniel Rowland, and Maria Howard under the listed propositions, all contributing to the profile. When we have this happen in an item, it is recommended to draw your conclusion based on our level of support for the the statistic associated with the individual.
All right, thank you. Item 139.1, page 61. What is that item?
These are swabs from the foot, bed, and understrap of black and red Nike flip-flop from the trunk of the Chevrolet Impala.
Were you able to interpret that item?
The DNA profile developed is a mixture of at least 5 individuals. Due to the complexity of the mixture, no further interpretation can be offered.
All right. Item 140.1. What is that?
This is a swab from scraping the interior of a black beanie, the brand Field Grade, from the trunk of the Chevrolet Impala.
Okay. And what was your first comparison to that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 4 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus a scenario of 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 210,000 times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
All right. So according to the verbal scale, that would be what level of support for Ms. Josephson being part of the mixture on the beanie?
This statistic falls in our strong support range.
Okay. And your second comparison regarding Mr. Rowland?
The DNA profile is approximately 11 octillion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Showing you what's been marked as States 18 for ID. Can you tell me what that item is?
This is the parent item, which is the black beanie.
From item 140.1 that you just discussed?
That is correct.
And again, regarding the analysis on this item, States 18 for ID, you indicated strong support for Ms. Josephson's inclusion in the mixture. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And very strong support for Mr. Rowland's inclusion in this mixture, correct?
That is correct.
All right, this time the state would offer State Exhibit 18 amendments.
Says it fits.
I would object for that foundation.
That was marked for IV purposes only yesterday. It is admitted at this time.
Thank you, Your Honor. Very, very briefly. That's the meeting we're talking about, Agent Dwayne, correct?
I did not see the parent item. I only received the cutting.
Cutting from this item, I guess, from item 140.
That is correct.
Thank you. All right, one more item regarding the, well, a couple more items regarding the car. Item 47, I'm gonna jump back for you, sorry. 47.1, that's on page 20, is that right?
That is correct.
All right. And what was your results regarding that related to Samantha Josephson on that item? What is the item, 47.1?
These are swabs from the footbed and understrap of a black and red left side flip-flop found in the trunk of the Chevrolet Impala.
And your results were related to Ms. Josephson on the flip-flop from the trunk.
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus the scenario of 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 2.9 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Very strong support, correct?
That statistic falls in our very strong support range.
And what about your results as it pertains to Mr. Rowland in regards to the flip-flop from the trunk?
Under the same scenarios, the DNA profile is approximately 35,000 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
All right, thank you. And what level of support was that?
This falls into our strong support range.
Thank you. Did you also generate a second report in this case regarding some swabs taken from the Impala?
I did.
All right, do you have it in front of you?
I do.
If I may refer you to that, please. In regards to item 67, there's a swab from rear side center console of the Impala, is that right?
That is correct.
Was Ms. Josephson included as that part of that mixture?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. The scenario is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
And this swab from the rear side center console, was it tested for blood?
Yes, presumptive testing for blood was positive.
All right, item 71, swab from front passenger seat headrest. Was that tested for blood?
Yes, presumptive testing for blood was positive.
And the results related to Ms. Josephson's inclusion.
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus a scenario where 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 3.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
All right. Item 72, rear passenger seat of the Impala, was that tested for blood?
Yes, presumptive testing for blood was positive.
And your result regarding Ms. Josephson's inclusion for that item, which is a swab from the rear passenger seat of the Impala?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the mixture versus the scenario where 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. The result of that is the DNA profile is approximately 4 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Number 75, item 75, swab from the side of the driver's seat headrest of the Impala. Was that tested for blood?
Yes, presumptive testing for blood was positive.
And the results regarding Ms. Josephson on that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
And lastly, regarding that set of items, item 77 was swab from a driver's seat seat buckle receiver. Is that right?
That is correct.
And was that tested for blood?
Presumptive testing for blood was positive.
And the results of your analysis regarding Ms. Josephson?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus scenario 2 where an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
All right, thank you, Agent Dwayne. I want to turn your attention to the last grouping of items that we're going to discuss, and these are items that, as testified to earlier, came from the Mountain Brook series of evidence. Item 106.
Sure, is that, let's all stand for a moment. Okay.
All right. Item 106.1, what is that?
This is a swab from the finger of a black right-hand glove from the white basket from the closet left of the bed in Maria Howard's bedroom.
And what were your results of this glove as it relates to Ms. Josephson?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus it being 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 4 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Same item, the swab from the finger of the black glove found inside the house. was Mr. Rowland included as part of that mixture?
Under the same scenario, the DNA profile is approximately 5 times more likely if 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if Nathaniel Rowland and an unidentified unrelated individual contributed to the mixture.
Thank you. There was also one on 106.2.1, that's a hair from the same right-hand glove, it appears. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And what was the result of the analysis of that hair?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus scenario 2, an unidentified unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 6.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile than if an unidentified unrelated individual contributed the profile.
Once again, that corresponds with which level of support?
Our very strong support range.
All right. Item 107.1 is a swab from a cuff of a black left-hand glove from the white plastic Family Dollar bag number 2, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And if you would tell the jury what your results were regarding Ms. Josephson on that glove found from the Family Dollar bag.
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 4 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus scenario 2 of 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 2.5 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Same item. What were your findings as it relates to Mr. Rowland?
The DNA profile is approximately 460,000 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So in terms of the level of support, item 107.1, the left glove in the Family Dollar bag, the level of support for Ms. Josephson's inclusion is?
This falls into our very strong support range.
And on that same item, the level of support for Mr. Rowland's inclusion?
This falls into our strong range.
Okay. All right, I want to turn you to 108.2, page 39. What is that item?
These are swabs from the handles of a bag from item 108, which was the white plastic Family Dollar bag labeled number 1.
Okay. And your results regarding Ms. Josephson on that Family Dollar bag item swab?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus a scenario of 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of this comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 3.5 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
And again, at the risk of repeating myself, the unidentified individuals you refer to, again, this could be somebody different than the ones we talked about before, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Could be the same.
Yes, that is correct.
No way to know, correct?
That is correct.
All right, 108.3.1, that is page 39, I believe. Yes. What is that item?
This is a cutting from 5 wads of possible paper towels from miscellaneous contents removed from the bag from item 108, which was the white plastic Family Dollar bag labeled number 1.
What was your first comparison that you did?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus the scenario of 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 56 million times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Same item, what were your results regarding Mr. Rowland?
Under the same circumstances, the DNA profile is approximately 22 times more likely if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
108.3.2, cutting from a wad of paper towels from this Family Dollar bag number 1, is that right?
That is correct.
All right. And again, what were your findings regarding Ms. Josephson and Mr. Rowland on that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus a scenario of 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 2.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. Under the same scenarios but involving Nathaniel Rowland, the DNA profile is approximately 3 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So regarding these items, the cuttings from the paper towels from the Family Dollar bag number 1, both Mr. Rowland and Ms. Josephson are included in that mixture, is that correct?
The statistic supports inclusion for both of these individuals.
And in terms of the verbal scale for each?
For the statistic associated with Samantha Josephson, this falls within our very strong support range. For the statistic associated with Nathaniel Rowland, this falls within our weak range.
Okay. .3.3, what is that item?
These are swabs from entire exterior as they were submitted of 3 gloves from miscellaneous contents removed from the bag from item 108, which was the white plastic Family Dollar bag number 1.
Why does the description of the item say as submitted?
Sometimes it is difficult to tell with certain types of gloves which would be the inside and the outside. So the way our forensic serologists process these items is they will say from the exterior as it was submitted, instead of trying to determine which is the true exterior or interior of the glove.
So would that be common in the type of gloves you're talking about, like say, well, like this kind of glove?
Yes, that is correct.
Or the blue plastic gloves of similar nature?
Yes.
All right, and so in regards to the item here, 108.3.3, which is 3 gloves, what were your findings regarding the inclusion of Ms. Josephson and Mr. Rowland?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus a scenario of 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 2.2 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. Under the same scenarios but involving Nathaniel Rowland, the DNA profile is approximately 5.2 quintillion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So regarding those gloves, item 108.3.3, the level of support for the inclusion of Ms. Josephson and Mr. Rowland is what?
Both of these statistics fall in our very strong support range.
All right. .3.5, interior as submitted of glove marked B from Family Dollar bag number 1. What did you find regarding Ms. Josephson?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus the possibility of 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 3.5 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
All right, thank you. And I believe this might be the last of the gloves. 108.3.6, interior as submitted glove marked C from White Family Dollar bag number 1. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And one more time regarding the gloves, how many profiles were in this mixture?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 4 individuals.
Was Ms. Josephson included in that mixture?
Under the scenarios of Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture versus the scenario of 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture, the DNA profile is approximately 2.3 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
And the level of support for her inclusion?
This statistic associated with our very strong support range.
Same item, the glove from a glove marked C from Family Dollar bag number 1. Was Mr. Rowland included in that item?
An uninformative statistical result was obtained. No conclusion can be made regarding Nathaniel Rowland as a possible contributor to the mixture under the listed propositions.
No conclusion either way.
That is correct.
All right, Agent Dwayne, just a few more items. .128.3, it's on page 52 of your report. What is that item?
These are swabs from the interior of a Dollar General bag from item 128, which was a black bag from the trash can.
And the results regarding Ms. Josephson.
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. In the scenario of Samantha Josephson contributing the DNA profile versus the scenario of an unidentified, unrelated individual contributing the DNA profile, the result of that is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
Is it fair to say that you got the same result as it pertains to 128.4, a swab from an interior IGA bag out of the same item?
That is correct.
And the same result as well for 129.1, cutting from toilet paper from inside that trash can?
That is correct.
Single source with Ms. Josephson, correct?
That is correct.
Very strong support for Ms. Josephson.
That is correct.
All right. All right, turn your attention to 130.1.1, page 53. Cutting from left side hem of tan shirt removed from Family Dollar bag number 2, correct?
That is correct.
And was Ms. Josephson included in that mixture?
This DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 2 individuals. First scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus the scenario of it being 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 4.1 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if two unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
What about for the same item about Mr. Rowland's inclusion on that tan shirt?
The DNA profile is approximately 13 times more likely if two unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if Nathaniel Rowland and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture. So just for clarification, this profile is 13 times more likely if the scenario were two unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to it rather than if Nathaniel Rowland and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to this mixture.
Same shirt, 130.1.2 is a swab from the scraping of the neck area, swab from scraping the neck area of the same shirt, the tan shirt. Were you able to develop a DNA profile from that item?
Yes.
And were you able to get any results?
Due to the complexity of the profile and the inability to determine a number of contributors, no further interpretation will be offered.
.3 swab from the stain along open edge of the Family Dollar bag, bag number 2. Is Ms. Josephson included in that profile?
This profile was interpreted as single source. The scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
Fair to say that the same result for the swab on 130.4 from the interior of a cardboard roll out of that Family Dollar bag, bag 2?
That is correct.
I'd like to turn your attention to a couple final items, and then I'll be done. Let me jump back to your other report very quickly, to your second report. Item 125.1. What is that item?
These are swabs from the sole of the right shoe of a pair of pink size 9K shoes from the closet underneath the stairs of Maria Howard's residence.
And your results regarding Ms. Josephson's inclusion on that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from two individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture versus a scenario of two unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that is the DNA profile is approximately 3.5 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if two unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Thank you. Make you jump back one last time to page 57 of your first report, item 131.1.1.1. What is that item?
This is a cutting from the right cuff of a shirt removed from item 131, which was the white plastic Family Dollar bag labeled number 3.
I'll show you what's been marked or admitted into evidence, states 329 into evidence. If you could look at the outside of the bag, what your item number is that?
This is item number 131.1.
And how does that pertain to the item that we are talking about there?
That would have been a parent item to this.
Parent item. Can you again say what that means?
That means the original item as submitted. And then when we sub-itemize, that means that we're taking cuttings or swabs or some part of that away.
Okay. So this 131, which is states 329, is the parent item. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So in your analysis of the cutting from this item, what did you find in regards to Samantha Josephson being included or excluded?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 4 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus it being 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals that contributed to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 5.5 billion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Same item. What were your findings regarding Mr. Rowland's inclusion?
For the same scenarios, the DNA profile is approximately 10 trillion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Once again, the level of support for each of their inclusions.
Both of these statistics are associated with our very strong support range.
Same item, the parent item 131, there was, on your item 131.1.1.2, it's a swab from a scraping of the neck area, is that right?
That is correct.
What were your results regarding that interpretation?
The DNA profile developed is a mixture of at least 5 individuals. Due to the complexity of this mixture, no further interpretation will be offered.
Okay. And 131.1.2, what is that item?
This is 131.1.2.1. This is a cutting from the left thigh area of pants removed from item 131, which is a white plastic Family Dollar bag labeled number 3.
I believe that's the same bag here, it states 329, correct?
That is correct.
And it was a pair of pants, you said?
That is correct.
What was your result regarding Ms. Josephson on that item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. The first scenario is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus a scenario of 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 3.1 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
And regarding Mr. Rowland?
Under the same scenarios, the DNA profile is approximately 55 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Thank you. All right, last item. This is item 104. What are the item numbers that you reviewed in your report regarding 104? Is it 104.1, .2, and .3?
104.1, 104.2, 104.3.1, and that's correct.
All right, I'm going to show you what has been introduced into evidence already as states 295. Is that the parent item 104?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, so the analysis we're about to discuss, it's fair to say that all of that pertains to this item?
Yes.
All right. What is item 104.1?
These are swabs from serrated blade of camo-colored multi-tool from the white plastic Family Dollar bag labeled number 2.
Okay, you said swabs from the serrated blade?
That is correct.
All right. And what was your conclusion regarding Ms. Josephson as it pertains to the serrated blade on item 104?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus scenario 2, an unidentified unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 6.9 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the profile.
And the level of support for that?
This statistic falls in our very strong support range.
Two more related to that, correct?
That is correct.
104.2, is that right?
Yes.
What is that?
These are swabs from the inner edges of handles of camo-colored multi-tool from the white plastic Family Dollar bag labeled number 2.
Inner edges of handle, you said?
That is correct.
Okay. And what did your analysis reveal regarding Ms. Josephson's inclusion on the inner handles of this item?
The DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus Scenario 2, where 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. The result is the DNA profile is approximately 2.6 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So the level of support for Ms. Josephson's inclusion of the mixture on this handle is what?
This falls within our very strong support range.
Same line of questions regarding Mr. Rowland on this handle.
Under the same scenarios, the DNA profile is approximately 49 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Included? Correct.
This DNA profile is 49 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
That falls under your weak level of support, correct?
That is correct.
Now, in regards to the handle, as we just discussed, did you do additional testing? Specifically, earlier we talked about YSTR methodology. Did you do YSTR examination of this item?
I did.
And what was the result of your analysis regarding the handle from a YSTR standpoint?
The YSTR profile developed is a mixture of at least 2 male individuals. Xavier McFadden, Marcus Dwayne Williams, Oshimer Williams, and Derod Fleming are excluded as possible contributors. The partial YSTR profile of the major contributor to this mixture is from unidentified male individual B. The partial YSTR profile of the minor contributor to this mixture matches the YSTR profile of Nathaniel Rowland. The probability of randomly selecting an unrelated male individual having a YSTR profile matching the minor contributor to this mixture is approximately 1 in 59. Paternal male relatives of Nathaniel Rowland may not be excluded as the minor contributor to this mixture.
All right. So for the YSTR analysis of the handle, it's a mixture, correct?
That is correct.
And the major contributor could not be identified?
That is correct.
And in regards to the minor contributor, what are you saying again regarding Mr. Rowland as the minor contributor?
The partial YSTR profile of the minor contributor to this mixture matches the YSTR profile of Nathaniel Rowland.
And lastly, 104.3.1, what is that?
This is a hair from the camo-colored multi-tool from the white plastic Family Dollar bag labeled number 2.
Okay. And a hair from the same item?
That is correct.
Okay. And what was your finding regarding Ms. Josephson's inclusion in the hair found on item 104?
The DNA profile was interpreted as single source. Scenario 1 is Samantha Josephson contributed the DNA profile versus Scenario 2, where an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed the DNA profile. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 6.8 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson contributed the profile than if an unidentified, Unrelated individual contributed the profile.
The level of support for that?
This statistic falls in our very strong support range.
Agent Dwayne, thank you very much. Those are all my questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take about 15 minutes. Please do not discuss the case.
be seated.
May bring the jury.
Your seat, Judge.
Very good. Cross-examination.
Thank God, please.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Agent Dwayne. Is it Agent Miss?
Agent's fine.
Agent, okay. Agent Dwayne, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. All right, so you just testified about a whole bunch of items. I'm gonna try not to go back through everything, but I can't promise. I want to back up though to when you first got involved with this case. That was back in March of 2019, right?
That is correct.
And do you recall the first day that an item was submitted to you for testing?
This was on March 30th of 2019.
March 30th, 2019. Do you have all of your, I guess, supplemental reports, or do you just have the report from December and June?
I just have the latter two.
Okay. Jonathan, may I approach? I just needed your report dated March 30th, 2019, correct?
That is correct.
And you had a number of supplemental reports after that, right?
That is correct.
And that's because there was a large volume of items submitted for testing and you kind of updated as you went.
That is correct.
So I think we had, what, a total of 7 or so different report installments?
I received evidence on 8 different days.
Do you have those days?
I do.
Can you tell us what they are, please?
The first date was March 30th of 2019, and then April 1st of 2019, April 3rd of 2019, April 4th of 2019, April 15th of 2019, April 18th of 2019, August 9th of 2019, and June 29th of 2021.
Thank you. Now, if you look back at your, what was submitted to you on March 30th, you were provided with 3 items to compare on that day, correct?
That is correct.
And you received a buccal swab from Ms. Josephson.
I apologize. I received 5 items.
5? Okay. One of those items was a buccal swab from Ms. Josephson.
That is correct.
Another one was a swab from a left shoe, a black and white shoe.
That is correct.
And a third one was a swab from the rear driver side interior panel.
That is correct.
And you said you received the items on the 30th and you issued your report on the 30th, correct?
That is correct.
And that request came from who? Do you recall?
I got the phone call from a SLED agent.
Do you remember which one it was?
I do not recall off the top of my head.
Well, let me ask you this. Is it common practice, or just is it common for your department to be able to turn around on testing, peer reviews, and issuing reports within a number of hours?
Yes, it depends on the number of items and the type of items.
And sometimes it takes months. Is that fair?
That is correct.
But there are times also that special requests can come from law enforcement or by order of the court to prioritize to try to get the testing done more quickly, right?
More efficiently, yes.
Yes, I mean, I'm not trying to suggest that you aren't, that your department doesn't work efficiently, but there's only so many hours in the day. If people are giving you hundreds of items to test, don't y'all receive items from all over the state?
Yes, we do.
And sometimes there can be a backlog.
Yes, that is correct.
But y'all work as quickly as you can, as efficiently as you can to try to get to each and every task as it comes in, right?
That is correct.
Now you said your the third report you issued was around April 18th.
I apologize, I do not have the dates of the reports.
Your mic, if I may.
Yes, this report is dated April 18th of 2019.
And on this report, we see for the first time that items 17 and 18 are listed, correct?
That is correct.
And again, that's April 18th of 2019.
Yes, that is correct.
And we'll come back to items 17 and 18 in just a minute. But like you said, throughout the next couple of months, even years, you did the testing, you put it through the peer review, you issued your reports as efficiently as possible so you could get the reports done.
That is correct.
And when you finish your report, do you personally hand it to the investigator?
Not typically, no.
Where do you typically upload your report to?
We have an internal laboratory management system called the BEAST, and that is where our reports are written and published.
And so an investigator at SLED would have access to that database.
Yes, once the report is published.
And they can access it at any time after you've published it.
Yes, that is correct.
And they would not have to contact you for any special login. They can go get it themselves.
As far as I understand, yes.
And it's not your responsibility to track down an investigator to tell them, hey, my report's finished. You submit it, you upload it, it's published, and your job there is complete, right?
That is correct.
All right, now do you have your December 5th report?
I do.
All right, so I'd like to start first, just going over some things that were found and that you processed inside the vehicle. But first, you were discussing with Mr. Goldberg the different ways that DNA can be transferred from one item to another. One of those ways is just by simply touching something, right?
That is correct.
If you sneeze, you can transfer your DNA that way, if you don't cover your mouth.
Yes, that is correct.
You said blood is a very strong indicator of, a DNA transfer.
Yes.
And skin cells. I guess that would be the same thing as touch. Is that right?
What is the question?
Skin cells, transferring skin cells.
Yes.
So transfer DNA. Am I correct in saying that DNA can transfer from one item to another without the person having direct contact with that originating source? Does that make sense?
Yes, that is possible.
So, for example, if there was blood in the back of my car and I touched that blood, that DNA would transfer from that item to the person that touched it.
Yes, if the blood is wet, then yes.
And if there are other items in the car that come in contact with blood, the blood can transfer from one to the other.
Yes, that is correct.
You can also transfer DNA by, if somebody owns a sweatshirt, you wear the sweatshirt, it's safe to assume that your DNA is going to be on that sweatshirt.
Yes, it is possible that your DNA will be on that sweatshirt.
If somebody owns a car and you drive the car, it's very likely your DNA is going to be on the steering wheel.
It is possible that your DNA would be on the steering wheel.
It's possible your DNA will be on the gear shift.
Yes, that is possible.
All right, so I'd like you to look at item 3 for me on page 4. Item 3 was one of the first things you said was given to you on March 30th.
That is correct.
And the swab was labeled from rear driver door side interior panel, correct?
That is correct.
And when you ran this sample, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did not have a known sample from Mr. Rowland at that point, right?
That is correct.
But on March 30th, the presumptive test for blood was positive.
Yes, that is correct.
And your result, it was interpreted that there was a strong likelihood that Miss Samantha Josephson was a potential contributor.
The statistic associated with Samantha Josephson fell in our very strong support range.
And that was on March 30th.
Yes, that is correct.
And then on April 5th, that's when you received the known sample from Mr. Rowland, correct?
I received the known standard from Nathaniel Rowland on April 3rd of 2019.
Okay, April 3rd. But on the April 5th report that you issued, that's when you indicated that Nathaniel Rowland was excluded from that sample as a possible contributor, correct?
I can't confirm the date, but yes, I can confirm that result.
There you are.
Yes, for the report issued on April 5th of 2019, the result regarding Nathaniel Rowland for item 3 was that he was excluded as a possible contributor.
And just so we're clear, the profile that you interpreted for item 3, originated from 2 individuals.
That is correct.
So we know Nathaniel Rowland is excluded, right?
Yes, that's correct.
You were able to exclude also everybody else that you had a known sample for, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So there's an unidentified profile mixed with Ms. Josephson's profile on that swab.
Yes, that is correct.
Now, I'd like you to turn your attention to item 22. It's on page 14.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's 22.1. This item is listed as the envelope swab from stain below address window on item 22.
That is correct.
And for this particular item, you also got a mixture of 2 individuals.
Yes, that is correct.
And your proposition is that there's a strong likelihood, 3.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson was a contributor.
The statistic associated with Samantha Josephson as a possible contributor falls in our very strong support range.
Yes, ma'am. And that number is 3.7 septillion times more likely?
Yes,
And under for this item, Nathaniel Rowland is also excluded, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you've excluded everybody else that you had no profiles for.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's Samantha Josephson mixed with an unidentified person.
Yes.
Now, if you look over on page 15 at item 22.2, it's another swab taken from this envelope, swab from the outer edges of item 22.2, correct?
That is correct.
And on this swab, we had a mixture of 3 individuals.
Yes, that is correct.
And the DNA profile is approximately 42 billion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified related individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Yes, that is correct.
So a very strong probability that Ms. Josephson is present.
A very strong statistic associated with her possible inclusion.
And you testified that you did you created a proposition for Mr. Rowland also.
Yes,
Mr. Rowland is not included in this mixture of 3, correct?
the result for this is the DNA profile is approximately 4 times more likely if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. So this DNA profile is 4 times more likely to have occurred if the second scenario where Nathaniel Rowland is not included as a contributor occurred.
Okay. It's more likely if Nathaniel Rowland is not a contributor.
That is correct.
Okay. And you came to that same conclusion for Xavier McFadden. It's more likely if he is not a contributor, correct?
That is correct.
You came to that conclusion with Dwayne Williams. It's more likely that he is not a contributor.
That is correct.
You came to that conclusion as far as Maria Howard goes. She is not a contributor.
It is trending toward exclusion. Yes.
And then under the last proposition, you have excluded Oshmar Williams and Derod Fleming, correct?
That is correct.
So with this particular swab, we have Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified people in this mixture.
That is correct.
All right, please look at item 38. I'm sorry, 38.1 is on page 18. This particular swab is a mixture of at least 5 people.
Yes, that is correct.
And you testified that anything over 4, you cannot run an analysis on.
Yes, that is correct.
And how many DNA profiles does each person have? One per person, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And the same thing was for item 39.1. There were 5 profiles identified, so you could not do any more testing.
Yes, that is correct.
But we know there were 5.
Yes.
Now, item 45.1 is down at the bottom of this page. It is labeled as swabs from the right sleeve near cuff of black jacket, Robert Comstock size extra large from rear passenger seat of the Chevy Impala. You were able to identify profiles on this item as well, correct?
That is correct.
And the profile is a mixture of 2 individuals.
Yes, that is correct.
And Samantha Josephson's likelihood of being a contributor to this mixture is pretty strong, right?
Yes, the DNA profile is 3.7 septillion times more likely.
That it's her and another person contributing to the mixture.
That is correct.
And Nathaniel Rowland is excluded from being that second person, correct?
That is correct.
and you excluded everybody else that you had known samples for with this particular item.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's Samantha Josephson and an unidentified person that we don't know.
That is correct.
Now, on item 45.2, swabs from the upper right and lower left areas of the black jacket, same black jacket, that was found in the rear passenger seat of the Chevy Impala. This profile is a mixture of 3 individuals.
That is correct.
Samantha Josephson had a very strong, it was approximately 2.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture, correct?
Correct.
Than if it was
3 unidentified, yes.
And with this item, the swabs from the right and left side of this jacket, Nathaniel Rowland is excluded, right?
That is correct.
And you excluded everybody else that you had known samples for?
Yes, that is correct.
So it's Samantha Josephson mixed with 2 other people that we don't know.
Yes, that's what the statistic implies.
And when we look at 45.3, that's another, the scraping from the interior neck area of the same black jacket that was found in the back seat of the car.
Yes, that is correct.
It's a mixture of at least 5.
Yes,
So you could not do any testing on that.
that is correct.
Can you turn to page 24, please, item 62? This is the steering wheel of the Chevy Impala, correct?
That is correct.
And this is a mixture of 3 people.
Yes,
And the first proposition that you did included Nathaniel Rowland as a possible contributor.
yes,
And it was approximately 970 billion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
the DNA profile was approximately 970 billion times more likely if that were the case, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Versus it being 3 unknown people.
Yes, that is correct.
And then you ran the proposition for Maria Howard,
Yes,
and she had a pretty strong supported proposition for being included on that swab as well, right?
yes, the statistic associated with Maria Howard was in our very strong support range.
And having DNA of 2 individuals who were driving a vehicle show up on a steering wheel is not uncommon, correct?
That is correct.
But there were 3 individuals in the mixture, right?
That is correct.
And so everybody else that you had a sample for, including Samantha Josephson, was excluded from that mixture.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's very likely Nathaniel Rowland, Maria Howard, and somebody that we don't know.
That is correct.
I'd like to look for you to look over on page 26 at item 63. This is the swabs from the gear shift of the Chevy Impala. This was a mixture of 4, correct?
That is correct.
And under this proposition, it was approximately 390 billion times more likely that Samantha Josephson contributed to the DNA mixture than if it was, contributed to the DNA mixture and 3 other people versus it being 4 unidentified people.
It was 390 billion times more likely to see this DNA profile if that were the scenario, yes.
Okay, and 150 billion times more likely to see the scenario involving Nathaniel Rowland.
That is correct.
Maria Howard was only at a 27 times more likely in this scenario if it was her and 2 other unidentified people.
The DNA profile is approximately 27 times more likely if Maria Howard and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So statistically, you can't say that she's not there. She's just considered a weak support.
That is correct.
Okay. you did a proposition for Xavier McFadden, another known sample that you had,
Yes,
and you found that it was 4 times more likely if 4 unrelated people contributed to the mixture versus Xavier McFadden being in that mixture with 3 other people, right?
that it is 4 times more likely to see this DNA profile if that's the case. Yes,
And then you excluded Marcus Williams, Ashamar Williams, and Rod Fleming.
yes, that is correct.
So there's still one profile that's on the gear shift of this car that we don't know who it belongs to, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you look at item 64 for me, please? It's on page 28, it's the next page. The exterior door handle of the rear passenger side. That is a mixture of 3 individuals.
That is correct.
It's approximately 140 quadrillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Yes, the statistic always applies to the DNA profile occurring. So it is 140 quadrillion times more likely to see this profile if that is the case.
Yes, ma'am. You did the same thing for Mr. Rowland. It was 9,100 times more likely to see Nathaniel Rowland in that combination.
That is correct.
Maria Howard, it was approximately 2 times more likely that she would be in that scenario.
It's 2 times more likely to see the DNA profile. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Begging the court's indulgence. Okay, now please look over to item number 72. It is on page. Oh, I believe that's in your June report. Is that right?
That is correct.
That's a swab that was done from the rear passenger seat of the Chevy Impala.
That is correct.
It was presumptive for blood.
Yes, that is correct.
The profile that you developed was a combination of 2 individuals.
Yes,
Nathaniel Rowland is not one of those individuals.
that is correct. He is excluded.
And in fact, outside of Ms. Josephson's profile, you excluded every other individual you had a known sample from.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's Ms. Josephson's profile mixed with somebody that we don't know.
Yes,
And can you look at item 76, please? Swab from the rear driver's side seat of the Chevy Impala. Mr. Rowland is not a contributor in that one either, correct?
that is correct.
Okay. Now this is going to take you back to the December report. I apologize for skipping around on you. Talking about some of the items that were found over at the Mountain Brook address. And we'll start with item 104. And that would be on page 32 of your December report. So you did you received a swab from the serrated blade, correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Rowland's profile is not on that blade, correct?
That is correct.
And there's a second swab that was turned into you, swabs from the inner edges of handles of camo-colored multi-tool, from the white plastic Family Dollar bag number 2.
Yes, that is correct.
That is a mixture of 3 individuals.
Yes,
Samantha Josephson has a high a strong support probability of being included?
The statistic associated with Samantha Josephson falls in our very strong support range.
Yes, ma'am. And that number that was assigned to that is 2.6 septillion.
That is correct.
And then you did the same setup for Mr. Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals versus it being 3 unidentified unrelated individuals, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And your result for that one was the DNA profile is approximately 49 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Yes, than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So there's a significant difference, wouldn't you agree, between 2.6 septillion and 49?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, and 49 is on your verbal scale, you said considered weak.
Yes, that falls in our weak support range.
And you did there was an extra step with the YSTR profile development, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And you had testified earlier about, a major contributor and a minor contributor. The major contributor, you said, leaves more DNA. There's more information for that individual's profile that's available. That's why it's considered major.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And the minor is whatever's left?
For a 2-person mixture, it's whatever is left.
Okay. And the major contributor on item 104.2 for the YSTR profile is unidentified male individual B, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. You said the minor contributor you're attributing to Nathaniel Rowland, right?
Yes.
But a little bit farther down, you say the probability of randomly selecting an unrelated male individual having a YSTR profile matching the minor contributor to this mixture is approximately 1 in 59.
Yes, that is correct.
Am I correct in saying that's 1 in every 59 people? Or men, 1 in every 59 men?
No, this is a statistic that is a counting method. And so we have a database that has a specific number of people, and basically each location of DNA is counted how many times it appears in that database, given the total amount of people, and then it is multiplied together through the product rule to get a final probability.
Okay. But you have him listed as a minor contributor, right?
That is correct.
And again, the major is an unidentified male B.
Yes, that is correct.
Can you look at item 107.1, please? That is on page 36. This is a swab from the cuff of a black left-hand glove from inside of a Family Dollar bag, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
This particular swab has a mixture of 4 individuals. Right?
Yes, that is correct.
And again, each human being only has 1 DNA profile. So we're dealing with 4 different people.
Yes, that is correct.
So with this particular sample, you had a combination of Samantha Josephson and 3 unrelated individuals, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And when you considered whether or not that scenario was likely, the DNA profile is approximately 2.5 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if it was 4 unknown or unidentified unrelated individuals, correct?
That is correct.
And you also testified that Mr. Rowland, Nathaniel Rowland's profile, it was possible 460,000 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland contributed in that same scenario?
Yes, to see that DNA profile.
And you did that same scenario for Maria Howard?
That is correct.
And hers was approximately 4 times more likely in the Maria Howard plus 3 unknown scenario?
Yes, that is correct.
And then everybody else that you had a known sample for was excluded, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So there's an unknown, unidentified person involved in this profile.
Yes, that is correct.
And you testified, I just want to back up for a second. When you get your swabs from serology, is there a picture or any sort of photograph of where they took the cutting from or anything like that?
I do not look at these pictures, but I think that it is in our protocol. I'm not actually 100% sure, but I know at times they take pictures and other times they do not.
But the swab for 107.1 is a swab from the cuff of a black left glove, right? Left-handed glove.
Yes, that is correct.
All right, now on that same page, item 108.1. Swab from the bottom crease on exterior of bag from item 108. And item 108 is a Family Dollar bag.
Yes,
Correct?
that is correct.
And this is a mixture of 2 individuals, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
In the scenario number 1, proposition set 1, Samantha Josephson plus an unidentified person contributing to the mixture, right?
Versus 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals.
Yes.
Yes.
And you said it was approximately 3.9 septillion times more likely that this combination was Samantha Josephson and an unknown, 3.9 septillion times more likely than if it was 2 unknowns.
It was 3.9 septillion times more likely to see this DNA profile if the scenario involving Samantha Josephson occurred rather than if the scenario not including Samantha Josephson occurred.
And then Nathaniel Rowland is excluded.
That is correct.
So this combination on 108.1 is Samantha Josephson plus somebody that we don't know.
That is correct.
Item 108.2, swab from the handles of a bag swab from handles of bag from item 108, which is identified as the white plastic Family Dollar bag number 1, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Nathaniel Rowland is not a contributor to this mixture either.
That is correct.
And it's a mixture of 2 people.
Yes, that is correct.
You excluded every single person that you had a known sample for except Samantha Josephson, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So the proposition that it's a combination of Samantha Josephson plus an unrelated unidentified person versus it being 2 unidentified people, it's more likely, it's 3.5 septillion times more likely that it's Samantha Josephson plus 1 more.
It is 3.5 septillion times more likely to see the DNA profile if scenario 1 with Samantha Josephson is true than if scenario 2 occurred.
Yes, ma'am. And we know that Nathaniel Rowland is not that second person.
That is correct. He is excluded.
Item 108.3.1 on the bottom of that same page. Cuttings from 5 wads of possible paper towels from miscellaneous contents removed from item 108, correct?
That is correct.
A mixture originating from 3 people.
Yes, that is correct.
Proposition 1, Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture. Versus 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to that mixture.
Yes, that is correct.
And it's 56 million times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to that mixture versus it being 3 unidentified people.
The DNA profile is approximately 56 million times more likely if that occurs. Yes.
And you did the same scenario with Xavier McFadden, one of your known samples.
Yes.
And your conclusion for that combination was the DNA profile is approximately 32 times more likely if 3 unidentified, unrelated people contributed to the profile versus if it's Xavier McFadden and 2 unidentified people.
Yes, that is correct.
You did the same setup for Nathaniel Rowland.
Yes, that is correct.
And for him, the conclusion was the DNA profile is approximately 22 times more likely if it was 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the profile versus if it was Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified people?
Yes, that is correct.
It's more likely it's somebody else, in layman's terms.
That is correct.
And you were able to or rule out, I should say, not going to say exclude, but rule out everybody that you had a known sample for, except for Marcus Williams as a possible contributor, correct?
I wouldn't use that wording.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to put words into your mouth. You were not able to get a strong support likelihood for any other person that you had a known sample for with this scenario.
For inclusion?
Yes, ma'am.
That is correct.
Okay. And I apologize about, I'm not a scientist. Will you look at 108.3.2, please? Cutting from, it's on page 42, cutting from 1 wad of possible paper towels from miscellaneous contents removed from the bag from item 108, the Family Dollar bag, bag number 1. This is a mixture of 3 people, 3 individuals in the profile, correct?
That is correct.
With the combination or the scenario of Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified individuals versus 3 unidentified individuals, your conclusion was that it is 2.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture, correct?
It is 2.7 septillion times more likely to see this DNA profile if that is the case, yes.
And you ran that same scenario for Nathaniel Rowland.
Yes,
And your results for that one were it's approximately 3 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture, correct?
the DNA,
Sorry, go ahead.
the DNA profile is approximately 3 times more likely if that is the case, yes.
And that is considered a weak support for inclusion, right?
Yes, the statistic falls in our weak support range.
Even with that weak support, isn't it true there's still a profile in this mixture that you are unable to include, you are not able to include any of the other known profiles to this mixture?
Yes, that is correct.
So there's an unidentified profile in this mixture.
Yes, that is correct.
Item 108.3.4. The swabs from the interior as submitted of glove marked A from the miscellaneous contents removed from the bag from item 108, which again is the Family Dollar bag, bag number 1, right?
That is correct.
Now Mr. Goldberg asked you, when you were explaining, you have a glove like this. Sometimes when you get it, in a trash bag or something, you don't know which part is the inside or which part is the outside.
That is correct.
And that's why it's listed as submitted, right?
Yes, that is correct.
But isn't it true that, if this glove was sitting here on the ground and I just picked it up, throw it away, my DNA could get on that glove, right?
Yes, that is possible.
But on the glove that you got the swabs from, there are 3 individuals in the profile, right?
This is for item 108.3.4.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it was interpreted as a mixture originating from 3 individuals.
Bear with me, I lost my place. Begging the court's no offense. Okay. I apologize for that. I got lost in the report. So 108.3.4. Yes, ma'am. Glove marked A for miscellaneous contents. A mixture of 3 individuals, and under the proposition for glove A, Nathaniel Rowland is excluded as a contributor.
Yes, that is correct.
But there's a mixture of 3 individuals.
Yes, that is correct.
You excluded every other known sample that you had other than the possibility of Samantha Josephson being present, right?
Yes, that is correct.
108.3.5, glove mark B, again, interior as submitted, because y'all don't know, right?
That is correct.
Nathaniel Rowland's excluded.
Yes.
Every other known sample that you have other than Samantha Josephson is excluded.
Yes, that is correct.
But this is a mixture of 2 individuals.
Yes.
So it's Samantha Josephson plus somebody that we don't know.
Yes, that is correct.
I want to go back to this glove for just a second. Now, assuming, because we don't know, if somebody has your hand, I ripped it, we'll try that again. If somebody were to put their hand in this glove, I apparently cannot get my hand in this glove. Let's imagine that somebody had their hand inside of a glove, right? You would assume that there's a possibility I'm going to leave my DNA inside of that glove, right?
Yes.
And if I happened to have somebody else's DNA on my hand, and I put my hand inside of that glove, there's a good chance I can leave that person's DNA inside of that glove too, right?
Yes, that is possible.
And that's an example of transferred DNA.
Yes,
The DNA was transferred to me and I transferred it to somebody else.
that is correct.
All right, so can you please look at item 108.3.6, please? This is listed as swabs from the interior as submitted of glove marked C from miscellaneous contents removed from the Family Dollar bag 1, right?
That is correct.
This is a combination of 4 profiles.
Yes,
So 4 different people.
that is correct.
And Samantha Josephson, you had the scenario Samantha Josephson plus 3 unidentified unrelated individuals versus it being 4 unidentified unrelated individuals.
That is correct.
And for that scenario, the DNA profile is approximately 2.3 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to that mixture, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So it's a pretty strong support that her profile is included in that mixture.
Yes,
And you did the same for Mr. Rowland, Nathaniel Rowland, correct?
that is correct.
And we have no conclusion on that, right?
That's correct. And the uninformative statistical result was obtained. No conclusion can be made regarding Nathaniel Rowland as a possible contributor to this mixture under the listed propositions.
And Mr. Goldberg asked you if it was possible for, his DNA could be there. Is that possible? You just don't know statistically?
Yes, no conclusions can be made.
Isn't it also true that it's possible his DNA is not there?
Yes, that's possible.
Will you look at item 128.1.1, please? That's on page 48. That's the cuttings from towels from miscellaneous contents removed from the bag. Bags of item 128, the black, black trash bag from the trash can.
That is correct.
And you developed a profile of 2 people being included.
Yes,
Samantha Josephson, in her scenario, Ms. Josephson and 2 unrelated individuals. I'm sorry, Samantha Josephson and 1 unrelated individual, right?
that is correct.
Versus 2 unrelated individuals.
Yes,
And it's 3.9 septillion times more likely if the scenario involves Samantha Josephson and that 1 unrelated person.
the DNA profile is approximately 3.9 septillion times more likely if that is the case, yes. Rather than if 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Yes, ma'am. And Nathaniel Rowland, when you put him in that scenario, he's excluded,
That is correct.
along with everybody else you had known profiles for, correct?
That is correct.
So this combination is Samantha Josephson plus somebody that we don't know.
That is correct.
Would you please look at item 128.2? Swabs from the open edge of the black trash bag and handles of 2 interior bags from items 128, which is the black bag that was inside the trash can. This is a mixture of 3 people, correct?
That is correct.
The first scenario you ran included Ms. Josephson and 2 unrelated people versus 3 unrelated people, right?
That is correct.
And it was 10 times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated people contributed to this particular profile.
It is 10 times more likely to see this DNA profile if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture rather than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
So her profile is present, it's just not the strongest support. It's a weak support.
There
in this
is,
scenario.
yes, there is weak support for her possible inclusion.
And you ran the scenario with Maria Howard and 2 unidentified individuals versus it being 3 unidentified individuals, correct?
That is correct.
And for that scenario, it's approximately 12 billion more times likely if the combination was Maria Howard and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture than if it were 3 unknown unrelated individuals, correct?
It is 12 billion times more likely to see this DNA profile if that is the case, yes.
So Ms. Howard is 12 billion considered a strong support, medium support, or weak support?
This statistic falls in our very strong support range.
And you did the same scenario for Mr. Rowland, correct?
That is correct.
And for Mr. Rowland, when you were looking at him plus the 2 unidentified people versus the 3 unknowns, it was approximately 5 times more likely if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus Mr. Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals, correct?
It is 5 times more likely to see the DNA profile if that is the case.
Yes, ma'am. So it's more likely that it's 3 unknown people.
It is more likely to see this DNA profile if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture rather than if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
Yes, ma'am. I swear we're almost done. Can you look at item 130.1.1, please? Those are cuttings from the left side hem area of the tan shirt that was removed from item 130, which is a Family Dollar bag, bag number 2, correct?
That is correct.
And you were able to develop a profile of 2 individuals, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And the hem's at the bottom of the shirt, right?
From my understanding.
Okay, that's right. You didn't see the parent item. You just got the sample.
Yes, that is correct.
We have a profile of 2 individuals. So Samantha Josephson was put into the scenario.
Yes,
And When you compared the two hypotheses, it was determined that it's approximately 4.1 septillion times more likely that Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture than if two unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture, correct?
It is 4.1 septillion times more likely to see this DNA profile if that is the case.
And you put Mr. Rowland's profile in that same scenario.
Yes, that is correct.
And the result that you came to as far as that scenario is that it's approximately 13 times more likely if it were two unidentified, unrelated individuals in this mixture versus if it was Nathaniel Rowland and one unidentified person, correct?
It is 13 times more likely to see this DNA profile if that is the case, yes.
So it's more likely that Mr. Rowland is not a contributor to this particular scenario, this mixture of profiles.
According to the DNA profile, yes.
And can you look at item 130.1.2, please? That's the scraping from the neck area of the tan shirt, correct?
That is correct.
This is another one where it's a mixture of 5.
Not quite. This was a DNA profile that was developed, but due to the complexity of the profile and the inability to determine a number of contributors, no further interpretation will be offered.
I apologize about that. I was looking at the wrong one. But anyway, you never did any further analysis because you couldn't determine how many people's profiles were present. Is that what that breaks down to?
Exactly.
And is it usually the situation when you have something like this, you can't determine how many? Is it typically more than one?
Yes.
Typically more than 2?
No, that's not necessarily the case. It can be where you suspect that it's a mixture of 2 or anywhere above that.
Okay, but definitely more than 1.
Yes.
Will you look at item 130.2 for me, please? Those are swabs from the handles of item. That's not what that says. Swabs from the handles of item 130, which is the Family Dollar bag number 2.
That is correct.
On those handles, there's a mixture of 2 individuals.
Yes.
The first scenario, you include Ms. Josephson's profile.
With an unidentified, unrelated individual.
Yes, ma'am. And you compare that to the profile of 2 unidentified, unrelated individuals.
Yes, that is correct.
And it's approximately 1.7 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and an unidentified, unrelated individual contributed to the mixture of that profile versus it being 2 unrelated individuals, correct?
It is 1.7 septillion times more likely to see the DNA profile if that is the case. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. And there were no other known profiles, known samples that you have that you could include as that second individual, right?
That is correct.
Would you please look at item 131.1.1.1? That's a cutting from the right cuff of the shirt. I believe Mr. Goldberg showed it to you. I would take it out, but I can't get gloves on. But that was the Nike sweatshirt that he had held up, black with white strings, correct?
From my memory, yes.
For this particular item, the cutting from the right cuff, I think we might have skipped over it. There were 4 individual profiles identified in this sample, correct?
That is correct.
So you do the scenarios, you include Ms. Josephson's profile with 3 unidentified individuals versus it being 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And Ms. Josephson has what you would consider a very strong probability of being present in this particular mixture.
Yes, the statistic associated with Samantha Josephson is in our very strong support range.
You testified that Mr. Rowland had would you consider, a strong likelihood of being involved in this profile that you were able to develop?
The statistic associated with Nathaniel Rowland fell in our very strong support range.
Would it surprise you for somebody's DNA to be on an item of clothing that they owned? If you know John owned a shirt, would you expect to see John's DNA on a shirt?
Yes, if he'd worn it.
Okay.
Or handled it, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am. And then you excluded everybody else that you had a known sample for, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So we have 4 profiles. We've got strong support for 2 profiles, Ms. Josephson and Mr. Rowland. So there's 2 unidentified profiles still showing up on this item, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And we don't know who they are.
That is correct.
Item 131.1.1.2. That's a swab from scraping the neck area of the same shirt, correct?
That is correct.
And this is the one I mistakenly was talking about a minute ago. This is the one that has 5 profiles.
That is correct.
Okay, so you could not do any more testing on it,
Yes, that is correct.
but we know there's at least 5.
Yes.
On item 131.1.2.1, cuttings from the left thigh area of the pants. That's a mixture of 3 different DNA profiles, correct?
That is correct.
So you start with Ms. Josephson, you create the scenario, it's Ms. Josephson and 2 unrelated individuals versus it being 3 unrelated individuals, correct?
That is correct.
And for that scenario, it's approximately 3.1 septillion times more likely if Samantha Josephson and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture, correct?
It is 3.1 septillion times more likely to see this DNA profile, if that's the case.
Yes, ma'am. And that's what's considered a very strong support.
Yes, that statistic falls in our very strong support range.
You included Mr. Rowland in that same scenario.
Yes, that is correct.
What would Mr. Rowland's likelihood be classified as?
The statistic associated with Nathaniel Rowland is 55, which falls in our weak support range.
So it's a weak support, you said?
That is correct.
And then you excluded everybody else that you had known samples for.
Yes, that is correct.
But we started out with a mixture of 3 profiles. So there's still 1 person that's unidentified from this mixture, right?
That is correct.
Item 131.2, the swab from the handles on item 131. That's a mixture of 2 individuals, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You created the scenario including Maria Howard and Maria Howard and 1 unidentified individual versus it being 2 unrelated people.
Yes, that is correct.
And Ms. Howard's result would be what's considered a strong support, correct?
This statistic of 92 billion falls in our very strong support range.
But everybody else you had samples for, including Ms. Josephson, were excluded.
That is correct.
So the second profile is somebody that we don't know.
That is correct.
And those were the handles on item 131, which was the Family Dollar bag, correct?
Yes.
In item 140.1, swabs from scrapings on the interior of the black beanie. You found a profile of 4 individuals.
That is correct.
You did the scenario for Miss Josephson, and it was 210,000 times more likely if it's Samantha Josephson and 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture than if it's 4 unidentified unrelated individuals contributing, correct?
It is 210,000 times more likely to see this DNA profile if that's the case.
And that's considered a strong support, correct?
Yes, that falls in our strong support range.
And Mr. Rowland, Nathaniel Rowland, also has a strong support range at 11 octillion.
11 octillion falls in our very strong support range.
You would not be surprised to see Nathaniel Rowland's DNA in that beanie if he's worn it before, correct?
That is correct.
But we know there's two other profiles on the sample that you have.
Yes, that is correct.
And you were not able to include any other known sample that you've been provided, right?
That is correct.
All right, a few more items. If you go back towards the front of your report to item number 13, just want to touch on a few things. You mentioned testing hair. A number of different hairs were collected and submitted for testing, right?
That is correct.
Did these hairs have roots on them?
If the hair was taken through DNA analysis, then it had a suspected root on it.
So when you received the hair, were you doing a root test or were you testing for some other type of DNA like blood or touch or something?
When we receive a hair, we look at it under a microscope and determine if there is a possible root. And if there is, we will send it forward to DNA analysis. And a root is just a skin cells from your head.
Okay. So if there's any hair that has testing done, then are you testifying that there was a root present?
I'm testifying that there was an apparent root present.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So if you please look at item 13. That's a hair that was from the right hand of Samantha Josephson.
That is correct.
And you were able to develop a profile off of this item, correct?
That is correct.
And it's a mixture of two individuals.
That is correct.
And Nathaniel Rowland is not one of those individuals.
That is correct.
And you were able to develop, there was no YSTR profile developed, correct?
That is correct.
And that's a hair that was in her hand. It has two profiles on it.
Yes.
Item 16 were the fingernail scrapings. 16.1 was the right hand fingernail scraping for Ms. Josephson, correct?
That is correct.
Nathaniel Rowland's DNA is not under Samantha Josephson's right hand fingernails for the scrapings, correct?
For the STR profile, that is correct.
Yes, ma'am. For 16.2, Nathaniel Rowland's DNA is not under Ms. Josephson's fingernails.
That is correct.
For item 17, fingernail clippings from the right hand of Ms. Josephson, Nathaniel Rowland's DNA is not on the fingernail clippings, correct?
That is correct.
You did develop a YSTR profile though,
That is correct.
but you couldn't determine the number of contributors to that profile.
That is correct.
So you couldn't do anything else with it.
Yes, that's correct.
On item 18, fingernail clippings from the left hand of Samantha Josephson. Mr. Rowland's DNA is not under those fingernails either, is he?
Nathaniel Rowland is excluded as a contributor to the STR profile. That is correct.
Yes, ma'am. And on item 18, you were able to develop a YSTR profile.
Yes, that is correct.
You were able to break it into a major contributor and a minor contributor.
That I was able to determine a major contributor.
And that's unidentified male A.
That is correct.
And with item 18, there were 3 profiles developed, right? For the STR mixture, 3 different profiles?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And you just testified that Nathaniel Rowland's not one of those profiles, correct?
That is correct.
So it would be Samantha Josephson and 2 unknown people.
Yes, that is correct.
And item 19, the swab from the left ankle of Ms. Josephson. There is a profile from Ms. Josephson present on her ankle,
That is correct.
which is to be expected.
Yes,
But there's also DNA that's not attributed to her that's also present.
that is correct.
You were not able to do any further testing as far as the STR testing, correct? I mean, the profile testing.
Yeah, no further interpretations could be offered.
Yes, ma'am. But you were able to develop a partial YSTR,
Yes, that is correct.
and that's a mixture of at least 3 male individuals.
Yes, that is correct.
But we have no other information that was available, and you were unable to do any further testing, correct?
Any further comparisons? That is correct.
And then swabs from the right ankle of Samantha Josephson, item 20. You don't indicate that Mr. Rowland's DNA is on her right ankle either.
That is correct.
Begging the court's indulgence. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any redirect?
Regarding item 104.2, that is the inner handle of the knife that I showed you earlier. Is that right?
That is correct.
You testified that you used 2 different methodologies to analyze that item. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You used the STAR-MIX methodology
Yes.
and the YSTR methodology.
Yes, that is correct.
Using the STAR-MIX methodology, there was some level of support for inclusion of the defendant in that profile. Is that right?
Yes, to see this DNA profile is approximately 49 times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 2 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 3 unidentified unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
And for the second methodology, the YSTR, there was also some level of support for Mr. Rowland's inclusion, correct?
That is correct.
Now, if an item were to be swapped, such as a jacket, for example, and a profile was developed from said jacket, and your analysis excluded a person from being part of the profile, okay? Does that mean that that person has never worn the jacket?
No, it does not necessarily mean that.
Does it mean they've never touched the jacket?
No, it does not necessarily mean that.
Does it mean they've never used it in any way whatsoever?
No.
Along those same lines, if I were to give you this jacket, or crime scene investigators, my jacket, and they were to swab it, and it was analyzed by you, would you automatically find my DNA from every swab that's taken from this jacket?
Not necessarily, no.
All right, there were questions about Ms. Josephson's fingernails and the items of evidence relating to her clippings and scrapings, correct?
That is correct.
Throw another hypothetical at you. If someone was wearing long sleeves and gloves and another person tried to scratch them or hit them or touch them in some way over those clothes, can you say whether the presence of those long sleeves and gloves would increase or decrease the likelihood of seeing that person's DNA profile under those nails?
This scenario would not apply to a universal rule, but one of the things that does inhibit touch DNA is if you're wearing layers, you're less likely to shed your DNA than if you are have your skin exposed. However, multiple possibilities are always should always be accounted for.
Certainly. There's been a lot of big numbers thrown out here today, septillion and octillion being two of them, correct?
That is correct.
And specifically, Ms. Pinnock asked you about item 140, I believe, your item 140. That was the parent item of the black beanie taken out of the Impala. Correct? I think you did some analysis on 140.1.
Yes, that is correct.
This was the parent item that we talked about earlier, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And regarding your analysis of this item, what was your result again regarding Mr. Rowland's inclusion on that item?
Specifically for item 140.1, the DNA profile was interpreted as a mixture originating from 4 individuals. The scenario 1 being Nathaniel Rowland and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture versus scenario 2 of it being 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributing to the mixture. The result of that comparison is the DNA profile is approximately 11 octillion times more likely if Nathaniel Rowland and 3 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture than if 4 unidentified, unrelated individuals contributed to the mixture.
11 octillion.
That is correct.
How many zeros are there in octillion?
27.
There has been a lot of discussion this afternoon in this courtroom about unrelated, unidentified individuals, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Pinnock referred to them earlier when questioning you as loosely as other people, but we're actually talking about other DNA profiles, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And to that end, can you say whether all of those profiles, all of those unrelated, unidentified individuals, whether they were all left at the same time on an item
No, I cannot tell that.
or in a location?
No.
Could have been left 2 different times, correct?
Yes, that is
Could
correct.
it have been 50 different times,
Yes, that is possible.
1,000 times?
It is possible.
She asked you about, I believe it was 13 different items out of the vehicle, the Impala, and referenced unrelated, unidentified individuals regarding each one of those items. Those unidentified, unrelated individuals, could those profiles have come from any person that's ever come in contact with that vehicle at any time?
Yes, that is possible.
The driver, perhaps?
Yes.
Passenger?
Yes.
Could it be from a mechanic doing work on the car?
Yes, that's possible.
Body shop worker?
Yes.
Even an assembly line manufacturer when the car was originally made?
Yes, that's possible.
She also asked you the same thing in regards to a number of items collected from Mountain Brook in the trash, correct?
Yes,
Would the same be true for almost all of those items regarding clothing, correct? I'm sorry, I'll rephrase the question. I'll restate the question. Is it possible that any person that's ever come in contact with, say, clothing found in those trash bags could have left their DNA profile there?
that is correct.
Or anyone who's ever come in contact with the grocery bags found in that location,
Yes, that is possible.
to include sales clerks,
Yes, that is possible.
manufacturers?
Yes, that's possible.
Thank you, that's all.
Any further cross-examination?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. We will resume at 9:30 on Monday morning. Remember the admonition that you are to not be exposed to any information about the case outside of the courtroom, not to discuss the case with anyone or allow anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence, because you are to decide the case solely on what you hear in this courtroom. And it would be unfair to your fellow jurors to deliberate with someone out in the streets, you might say, who have not heard the testimony. Not only unfair to your fellow jurors, but it would be a violation of your oath as jurors. And you don't want to do that. When you return on Monday, juror number 130, I'm appointing you to be the foreperson of the jury. As the foreperson, you take the first seat here in the corner. I believe that's the foreperson seat on the front row. And that'll be the foreperson's seat. It'll be your responsibility to serve from this point forward as a spokesperson for the jury. It'll be your responsibility to preside over the jury deliberations, and it will be your responsibility to write the verdict form representing the unanimous verdict of the jury when we reach that point at the end of the case. So I hope you all have a good weekend. We'll see you Monday morning.